Welcome back to the Experience Health Podcast, the space where we dive deep into root cause healing, nervous system regulation, and holistic healing practices to help you transform your health sustainably. I'm your host, Rachel Vaster, and today's episode is going to be powerful, especially if you've been feeling stuck, burnt out, or like your health isn't improving, no matter what you try. My guest today is Sophia Torrini. I hope I said that right. A certified clinical EFT practitioner whose own journey from chronic illness to full health transformation inspired a complete shift in her life. With a background in public health, technology, and training in meta consciousness, Sophia now helps others release emotional stress and experience real lasting healing. We'll talk about tools like EFT, how emotional stress impacts physical health, and what it means to hack reality to create a life of calm, clarity, and joy. So, whether you're brand new into tapping or deep into your healing journey, I promise this episode is going to spark something inside you. So, before further ado, let's dive in.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me on your show. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining me today. So, Sophia, can you take us back to your personal story? What led you to EFT and reality hacking as healing tools?
Okay, so I, like everybody else, worked in the healthcare system and climbing the ladder, uh, highly stressed all the time, uh, very disconnected from my body. And then a very traumatic emotional experience happened to me. And as an end result, an unnecessary surgery took place on my body, and my body started shutting down.
Mm.
And I had lots of consequences, and I wasn't expected to survive. To make
Mm.
a long story short, after I did survive in a miserable condition and
Yeah.
having tons of ailments, and not even able to walk, not because I was paralyzed, because I was very weak and I had been in the bed for 23 days.
Mm.
Um, I now knew, oh my goodness, now I'm alive and how I'm going to get past this. And the symptoms were there. They were pretty bad. And the question that I always had, how can a very healthy human being overnight be at the door of death? It wasn't a car accident. And they kept on saying, well, there's something wrong with your body, decided to shut down. That didn't resonate with me. Given my background in epidemiology, I started studying some stuff, and I found some modalities to patch me through for about 14, 16 years. But every so often, 2 to 3 times a year, the symptoms would be back. And it was really debilitating to live a life, a normal life. And then at some point, like on the 14th year, another big traumatic experience happens. Now nothing's working.
Mm.
Pretty much the prognosis was the same, but it would be a slow, miserable death, maybe over a few years or 2 years.
Mm.
So I said, there has to be something else. And I went and revisited stuff that I had discarded. So I had heard about EFT, I had looked it up, and I said, no, this is not possible. This stuff doesn't work. And I also revisited Dr. Joe Dispenza, where the first time I completely discarded him. But now I read it with an open mind, and now it made a lot of sense.
Mm.
Uh, and one of the core principles for healing before we go into TFT is your negative thoughts and emotions and unresolved trauma in the body. It's a matter of time before you head for disease. And I was already diseased. And if I
Yeah.
stayed in that state, the symptoms were going to get worse. And he talks also about brain waves and some other stuff. And I started doing his work, but I wasn't seeing significant progress. I couldn't get to this happy state or this relaxed state that
Yeah.
he was asking, or not asking, suggesting. And I was lost. And I said, okay, let me revisit EFT. And that's when everything started changing. The two of them together now worked.
Mm.
So in about 18 months, I got off all my meds that I had
Wow.
been on for 16 years. And I'm talking both the physical meds plus the emotional meds that I needed to be stress.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
pretty much went cold turkey I made a decision. And within less than 10 days, of course, I had to go through the fear of panic. What if it's going to happen? If it's not going to, work? And, doctors say you have to taper your meds and all this stuff. I was fine. I
Wow.
was absolutely fine. And
That's incredible.
it was about that turning point that I said I went into healthcare to help people. Epidemiology is the study of diseases. You see
Hmm.
what the trends are, what can cause a disease, how you design a clinical study. And I literally believed in that system. I mean, I lived in it and I breathed in it.
How
Uh,
long did you work in it?
30 years.
30 years. Wow. Wow.
30 years, I worked in two major hospitals. And
Wow.
then I worked in private practice and I've been in the OR. I've seen all of it.
Yeah.
And then I realized what my father kind of had told me, that the body can heal. And that's when I
Mm.
realized the body can heal. And the
Yeah.
symptoms did go away. But it wasn't just the symptoms that went away. My peace of mind came back. Actually, a peace of mind that I didn't have before.
Yeah.
That
Like
was,
just completely, you never had it before and it was able to develop because you were able to completely change your state of mind pretty much.
that's
It's like a
correct.
new person. Yeah.
Yes. And some challenges I had in my personal life changed in a positive way. And it really gave me a wonderful experience to literally experience unconditional love. And then I literally saw that I had to change in order for the world to change.
Yeah.
And so let's address what clinical EFT is and let's talk about the importance, if it's okay, the
Absolutely.
importance
Yeah.
of
I would love
emotion.
to dive into what it is and
So
educate my audience on that.
clinical EFT is evidence-based EFT, and it's an energy modality that uses cognitive psychotherapy by tapping on the body's meridians. So it's basically doing acupuncture without needles.
Hmm.
And the belief is that unprocessed emotions get stored in the body, creating energetic blocks because the cells have to communicate with a certain voltage. And when there's a lot of stored emotions in the body, they're static because the body is electric, static on that line, and the messages don't go clear, and the body doesn't replicate the cells correctly, right?
Hmm.
And so, why do emotions get stuck? So, let's discuss what emotions is not the same thing as feelings. So, we'll discuss that a little later. So, emotions are energy in motion and it's universal. We all feel this bodily sensations at time. And all emotions that are produced, all of them from the limbic brain, carry information. So when you were a child and there was danger, you witnessed something and you thought the harm was going to be coming to you were not able to speak up because you knew you would be next if it was something harmful. Well, that information remains stored in the body to teach you to avoid certain situations, but we are meant to process it. So as children, we do not know how to process that information. So it gets accumulated in the information, and usually it's negative experience because the positive experiences do not cause any harm. Actually, they cause the opposite. They cause healing. And they
Hmm.
get stored and accumulated, and we learn to live in our heads, which is what I did.
Hmm.
And then you have to reverse it. So emotions hold the limiting beliefs. It's not the other
Okay.
way around.
Hmm.
Thoughts are electric and emotions are magnetic, and they have a larger electromagnetic field. So the job of EFT is to release those emotions. And when the person starts tapping, they feel these bodily sensation leaving. Now, if we learn how to, and this takes a little bit of a while, it doesn't happen overnight, to not engage with the chatter and the story, emotions, it's been studied, only last for 90 seconds. Feelings, which is not the same thing as emotions, last longer. So, and I'll give an example. Let's say it's in the middle of the night and you heard something trying to break into your kitchen door. Almost all of us will wake up and go to the kitchen, right? So
Hmm.
that is a standard emotion, an alert system for all of us. You
Yeah.
go and you see it's the cat. Oh my goodness, it was the cat. You felt it for a second, you let it go, and you went back to bed.
Yeah.
Let's take the other type of person. They wake up, they see it's the cat. I can't believe this cat did it. And why does my boyfriend want to have a cat in the house? And they're ruminating and they're ruminating and they're ruminating. That rumination and that anger that's being created as a byproduct is going to get stored in the body.
Mm.
That's what's going to create the disease. And let's discuss how disease gets created, right? When the stress response been activated. So when there's stress, it's just to alert us. But sometimes we now have gotten so stressed that everything triggers us. So that constant trigger has the body constantly on a sympathetic mode, which means the stress response been activated and the body cannot heal. There's no way that they can't heal. Now, people who are dying,
Yeah.
this is the key.
Mm.
If people are dieting and they're not losing any weight and it's not their food, because some people do overeat, then they
Yeah.
need to look at what is their stressor in their life. So I had a client for a long time that had been overweight since childhood. And we were working on a traumatic experience non-related to weight. So we were working on these traumatic memories and we were going to address the weight later on. Within less
Hmm.
than 3 months, maybe 4 months, but about that time, she lost 30 pounds naturally without changing her diet because she started being at ease. She learned how to
Mm.
relax.
She'll
So,
learn how to get out of that fight or flight state. Yeah.
yes. So, importance for the body to heal is to be in a parasympathetic mode. How do we
Absolutely.
know how we get there? It's our brain waves.
Mm.
So when you're in high beta brain waves and you're over analyzing, most people think if I analyze my problems, I'm going to do better. Actually, that stresses the body out. So
Mm.
now you have your body constantly on beta brain waves.
Mm.
And it seems so familiar to you that you're like that stress. That's
Yeah.
actually
It's like
taxing your
addicting.
body.
Mm.
If we learn how to change our brain waves to alpha or theta, then we heal.
Mm.
And there's a
That's super
part
interesting.
that takes place at night. So a lot of people have trauma
Mm.
and they don't know they're replaying certain memories. If we do not get enough of deep sleep, non-REM sleep, you're going to wake up tired and there is no healing. So it's not the number of hours that you're in bed, it's
Yeah.
the
The quality of
quality of
sleep.
sleep that you
Exactly. I
are in
love it.
bed. And then again, that's determined about with your brain waves. So where does the EFT fit in this? Well, first of all, the act of physically tapping tells the body I am safe. You can't have a tiger here and I'm tapping.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the emotions are starting to get released. And so the brain waves change, but the energy starts moving out of the body, the unprocessed information that we had. And as they leave out, often people get a cognitive shift.
Mm.
And that is very helpful to break beliefs. Let's say there was a traumatic memory and they thought they were stupid or whatever it is, and they carry the
Hmm.
if I, I'm not good enough, the teacher said. Oftentimes, what happens in the tapping they get another piece of information and they say, oh my goodness, I was resilient being in that school where
Mm.
everybody was worse than me and there was all this bullying. And I thought I wasn't good enough, yet I was still a kind kid in the school and I excelled. So now that belief has no more power on you.
Yeah,
So,
that's
in a
incredible.
nutshell, that's how tapping works. So, what is the
Yeah,
requirement for us to be healthy? The body has to be in a positive state. Now, we can't do that 24/7, but we can do it the majority part of the day. And an important part is also breathing. Shallow breathing is going to activate again your sympathetic nervous system, which is why people who have panic attacks or fear that can barely breathe.
yeah.
Contrary to what everybody believes, panic attacks just don't happen. The clinical research indicates they start an hour before the panic attack happens
Interesting. Okay.
because we're so disconnected from the
Yeah.
body that only when it reaches that very high threshold and now you're in panic is when you
Yeah.
realize. But
So
the
it's not like a sudden like, oh my gosh, panic attack real quick, but it's from like the development of being so disconnected from your body. Does since you mentioned shallow breathing right before this, does the shallow breathing and being disconnected also go into
they
developing
go
panic attack?
hand in hand, and
Okay. Yeah.
I had difficulty. I
Mm.
still sometimes have difficulty to consciously breathe in the
Yeah.
belly. But when you
Mm.
consciously breathe in the belly, the body feels safer. That's why they have those the certain breaths that you breathe in for, then you hold, and the exhale is slower. They're all of them
Yeah,
designed.
physiological sigh. That's one of my favorites.
Yes. And since you brought the topic, everybody has seen a picture of the Buddha and they wonder why he has a huge belly. Well, he's displaying diaphragmatic breathing.
Mm.
That's why he has that big belly. He shows that you need to
Mm.
push the air out.
Yeah.
So when we breathe in the with the diaphragm, your belly expands.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I know some people who struggle a lot with like anxiety and gut issues, and I've noticed a lot of them have a really hard time in breathing into their diaphragm or doing like belly breathing because they've never practiced that mechanism before. And so they're used to just like shallow breathing all the time. So it definitely makes sense why they tend to
Absolutely.
have anxiety. And obviously that also influences gut health and other things. But wow, that's definitely really, really interesting.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, you brought gut health. So there's a combination of issues of gut health from a meta consciousness perspective, or German new medicine is another
Hmm.
way of discussing it. It's the biological cause of disease. So every organ holds an emotion, and there's a pattern that each organ has. For
Mm.
example, the liver holds anger, the kidneys,
Yep.
fear,
Mm.
the lungs hold grief. So someone who has breathing issues and can't breathe feels very powerless that the world is going to attack them on
Mm.
some level, or their world around them, meaning their close environment, the people who support this person is falling apart. Okay, so
Mm.
they will experience some sort of lung issues. Digestive issues, there's combination of, but let's take two: constipation and diarrhea.
Mm.
Constipation is you can't let go of that anger. You can't let go of that experience. So what does the body do? Doesn't move anything.
Yeah.
German new medicine, it's called the morsel. You can't digest that morsel to push it out. So you're holding on to that anger. You're holding on to whatever the story is. Diarrhea is okay, you saw what the reality is, but you don't want it. I need to push this out of my system. It has to come out. So the body does everything to push it out.
Mm.
Throwing up, you don't even want to even see what the reality is. So as soon as it's going to come in close to my system or entered my system, I have to get rid of it because
Mm.
it's faster to leave this way versus the other way. So that's why I
Yeah.
go up. So there's always a symbolic meaning. Common thing. I had a client who had vision issues. She was about to lose her vision. The good
Oh,
news
wow.
is she didn't, but there was a
Mm.
traumatic experience. She did not want to process when she was young. She had created a belief, and the left side, depending on the person, if they're right hand dominant, would be the feminine side. So this was an experience she had with her mother. Once that experience healed, she did not lose her vision further.
Wow.
So I got stabilized.
So when she was able to process the emotion that was triggered from that traumatic experience, she was able to stabilize her vision and not completely lose it. Did it
Got
reverse at all? Excuse me,
Well,
did it reverse at all in her case or?
she didn't reverse in her case, but I do have cases
Okay.
because she didn't continue.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
so she didn't continue. So I have a
Hmm.
very interesting story. I had a lovely woman who had done everything, and she had Tourette's. I don't know
Okay.
if you know what Tourette's is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she also had the cursing and the anger that goes with it.
Yeah.
Sometimes they had.
Hmm.
For some reason, I knew she told me that the symptoms started at the age of 4. I didn't feel it was the age of 4. So what we did is we worked on her birth experience. There's some practices we do, and we went through before she was born, the first trimester, second in the womb, and the third. I believe, if I recall well, it was the second trimester. She started shaking and cursing uncontrollably. So I asked her what was she sensing, because she was the little embryo. It
Yeah.
turns out was a very unfortunate experience. Her mother was pregnant to her, and the father was slamming her mother's face on the crib. So both the child in the womb was getting the shakes, but she was feeling
Wow.
the anger that the mother had to the husband. And the strange thing
Wow.
was she always disliked the father. Well, there's
Interesting.
no coincidence. Once
Yeah.
that healed, the Tourette symptoms went away.
Wow. And you use like did you use EFT coupled with the
Hacking reality, and they
hacking
call
reality?
it
Okay.
birth reimprint. So we go,
Okay.
it doesn't take a lot of sessions. In this case, the whole thing took 6 sessions because it
Wow.
was very specific, targeted. And she was familiar with EFT, and the reimprint is what did the job for her.
Interesting. I'm curious what your thoughts are on Tourette's, like in general. Obviously, like she kind of had like a specific case as to how she developed it, but in your opinion, do you feel like Tourette's is typically caused by some sort of a traumatic experience when you're younger or maybe in the womb or something like that? Typically triggered
I
by like
think
anger or
most of conditions start from childhood. The
okay, yeah.
pattern starts at
Mhm.
childhood. So they go from 1 to 7, you can extend it. Occasionally, there's some conditions they don't fit the norm, but let's discuss what disease is. It's a
Yeah.
lowering of frequency in the
Mm.
body, because when the body is in a high flow state, there is no disease.
Mm.
We heal. That's when the miracles take place. These miracles that supposedly take place, Dr. David Hawkins has the maps of consciousness.
Yeah, I read that book. Love that book. So
Oh, right.
good.
Well, if you go on the map
Yeah.
at 540, which
Mm-hmm.
is the frequency of joy, it says spontaneous healing.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
let's discuss that. So, when the person heals the traumatic experience, they're not a vibrational match to that story,
Yeah.
unless they want to ruminate. But most
Yeah.
people who come for healing don't want to ruminate on the story.
Yeah.
So, when we heal, we actually don't heal this physical entity, your physical entity.
Mm.
You actually move to a parallel reality where you're already whole. So, this lady also moved to a parallel reality that she wasn't holding that anger, and she realized it was her mother's anger that she was
Mm.
got with her. So that's how the healing took place. Now, if the person decides to ruminate and starts attaching, they're going to end up back to where they were. But
Yeah.
that's pretty much. So answering your questions, the majority of conditions, close to 90 something percent, is because, and it's the work of Dr. Gabor Mate mostly who discusses this, that
Mm.
comes from some sort of childhood trauma. It may not play out immediately,
Yeah.
but it plays out later. And he is pretty big in the field of childhood trauma. But there's other people who discuss that.
That's
It's
super
not just
interesting.
Dr. Gabor Mate. Dr. Dispenza discusses it.
Yeah.
There's many other. There's, I think, Dr. Woods is another person who discusses it. And so, yes, I would say it's caused because of trauma. So you need to look up what the organ is. Um, and you can look it up in German, new medicine or metaconsciousness. They're the same. It's just small variations.
Mhm.
And you find what emotion it says it might be or what pattern it is emotionally. And then you ask the client, do they have memories? For example, someone who cannot micturate, which is the medical term to urinate, uh, or they can't empty their bladder is a better
Yeah.
word, is because there's some sort of fear. What do animals do? They mark their territory by peeing everywhere, right? So if
Hmm.
you can't do that, you can't eliminate the bladder. That is a sign that when you were growing up, you weren't safe in your environment. And now something is re-triggering you as an older person. Something in your environment's constantly triggering you that you're not safe in your environment. And then you can go and pull those memories and see what they were. Like I had one, because I used meta consciousness on myself, I had certain memories where my space was violated and I couldn't let go of certain stuff. And once those memories were gone and I was able to forgive, that goes hand in hand afterwards, then the body released it. So the body is holding all of your emotions. That's what it's
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah. Have you read the book The Body Keeps the Score?
Mhm.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about how the body holds on to like past traumas and stuff, especially. That was like my introduction into that side of things in health. And that's something that's really important for people to understand. You said that about like 90% of disease is caused by a traumatic experience, especially in the childhood. Most people's health and lives are built from their childhood experiences. And what I want people to kind of I don't want people to be like, "Oh my gosh, well, I had like a terrible childhood, so like I'm gonna be like sick or I'm gonna develop disease or something like that." I want to share with people kind of like hope that like, okay, yeah, if you had a terrible childhood, they either already are struggling with a disease or they may develop a disease. That's something that they need to understand and face. But I also want them to kind of have some hope of like, oh, I don't need to go down that path or I can change the path that I am on right now. So if there's someone, sorry, who is currently like, yeah, I didn't have a good childhood. I'm struggling a lot with my health. What first thing would you recommend them do?
The first thing is to slow down and start breathing, see if they can pick up any negative self talk, because also our
Mm,
self attack
yeah,
causes disease.
yeah,
I'm not good enough. I am never going to heal, or I'm not thin enough. The body doesn't like that stuff. Or when we attack the body, why do you look this way? Why are you giving me
yeah,
this physical pain? The physical pain that the body is giving you is a GPS signal that something is not right. And when you don't
yeah.
listen to it, the alarm system now is always turned on. Now you can't figure it out.
Yeah, that's
And it,
exactly what happened to me, actually. I have a whole history of chronic disease and health issues in the past, and that was what triggered it. I had a terrible relationship with myself, with my body. I hated myself. I had terrible body dysmorphia. I talked very negative things toward myself constantly, and of course, I stressed myself out all the time. I was like overworking. I was so disconnected from my body, very similar to you, and reconnecting to my body and shifting from that negative talk towards myself and also towards my environment was huge in helping me heal. Chronic pain, it's I wanted to bring this up because you mentioned the chronic pain thing. Chronic pain was one of my most alarming symptoms that I had because you just can't ignore it.
Absolutely.
Well, I did, and then it just kept getting worse and worse and worse because I was ignoring it until I had like shooting nerve pain down my legs, down my arms, joint pain in literally every single joint because I just ignored it. And my body was like, hey, you need to pay attention to me. And the sad part of it is when people get into that sort of health, like if I had gone the typical medical route in trying to figure out what's wrong with my body and healing, they probably would have just been like, you have like rheumatoid arthritis or something like that, and then just put me on some sort of drug and saying like, hey, this will like help reduce the pain. Or they would have shot corticosteroids or something into my most annoying like I had really bad SI joint issues. They actually suggested cortisone shots or corticosteroids, not cortisone. Is it cortisone shots? I can't
They
remember.
do steroids for pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they suggested things like that, but that's not what the body actually needs to heal, and I did not do any of that to
You're
heal my
lucky.
body. It was
Very lucky.
all in my head and how I treated my body.
And I'm glad you did that. So chronic physical pain is number one, not listening to the body and
Yeah.
not processing the emotions.
Yep.
The unprocessed emotions will give you chronic pain. But you
Yeah.
asked about the audience. It doesn't
Mm.
matter what your childhood was. I hope that the audience, if they had a traumatic childhood, they do it before they get the symptoms because
Yeah.
you can heal it because even if you don't have symptoms, that adverse childhood experience is affecting your relationship. You don't feel
Yeah.
you can trust your partner, you don't feel that you're being loved, you're maybe not getting a promotion, or you're
Yeah.
constantly procrastinating.
Mm.
Procrastination is because of fear of failure
Yeah.
or the project is not going to go through.
Yeah.
So you can catch it early.
Mm.
And I hope you catch it early and don't wait till I did
Yeah.
to.
Same. Same, for sure. People need to, I really want people to understand the importance of catching it early because so many people just wait until they're completely debilitated with pain or health issues under a bunch of drugs. And it's like literally the last resort when you do not need to do that. If you start now to help improve your health, process emotions, uncover the past traumas that may be influencing you today. It's really, really important. That was one of the biggest things in the mindset side of things for me. I worked with he was called like a life transformational coach, but he helped me a lot with processing emotions and working through that. And I had made a lot of progress in my health up to that point, but I had terrible like mental health and mindset still, even though like my physical body was a little bit better, but working through that was one of the most transformational pieces in my life because I no longer felt like overwhelming sense of I don't know what the word is. It's funny because at the end of our time working together, we were talking about how I like thought and felt at the beginning of it, and I was like some things that he had written down, and I was like, I don't even remember thinking those things. Like I don't even remember being in that mindset because I'm so disconnected from that version of myself. I can't even remember how she thought or felt. So it's definitely hard for me to recover that, but I'm kind of like getting off track here a little bit. I want to I want to help people understand. You mentioned reality hacking a little bit,
Right.
but we haven't really gone into that too much. I want to help my audience understand that a little bit more. Like if you can break it down into like simple terms and how that will help people shift their internal and external world and what how this actually impacts their health and healing, helping them heal from disease.
So we have certain experience in my case. I had some experience of my physical body being violated
Mm.
when I was
Mhm.
young. And so first we release the anger that my younger self felt. It was the ages of 8, 13. There were like three experiences.
Okay.
And then after the emotional is removed, we re-imprint and rewrite that memory with a more empowering emotion. So my first, the experience that I had as a 8-year-old or whatever the age was, is everybody's attacking me and I'm powerless. And
Mm.
of course, I had tons of anger. So once the
Yeah.
anger and whatever, I re-imprinted it positive. So now that story is not holding me. And when you do that, you're going to a parallel timeline.
Mm.
Let's address where memories get stored. So memories are between two neurons, and neurons are neuroplastic.
Mm.
So once you release a traumatic experience that's actually playing in your hippocampus, it's going to be stored in your neocortex like every other memory. Like if I asked you what you ate for dinner 5 days ago, you can't remember. We want those traumatic memories to take the emotional charge, to remove them so they get stored like the other ones. And now you're pruning those two synaptic connections because your mind is not replaying that memory all the time because it's playing in the
Mm.
background, even though you don't know that. That's why you get the
Yeah.
knot in the stomach, or when there's a trigger, you just feel like that. And we
Yeah.
rewrite a new memory that's more empowering for the individual. And by doing that, you actually are moving to a parallel timeline.
Mm. Interesting. Okay. And when you mentioned releasing the emotion, just to be clear, are you talking about integrating the EFT techniques to release the emotion, or is this something separate from that?
I use EFT.
Okay.
So what
Okay.
can people do? They can do breath work. I
Okay.
just find it not as fast.
Mm.
So you could do breath work. I think after you've done some EFT, then breath work becomes easy. That fast breath work they have, the neurodynamic breath work, those are great for healing. They're usually an hour sessions. You can use the somatic experience by Peter Levine. That's a very good one. Or body awareness. It's just that I find them a little slower than
Mm.
EFT, but they
Do you
all
mean
work great
slower to work?
to work through. Yeah,
To work through.
especially if
Okay.
you have a lot of trauma. You're so disconnected from the body that you can't figure it out. So the words in the EFT somehow help you connect better with the body. You're just
Interesting.
verbalizing, the Peter Levine is you connect to the body and you connect to the sensation without wanting to push it away, and you get your messages, they're all somatic experiences.
Yeah.
So we have to heal our mind,
Mm.
we have to heal our body. Now, I know I gave a little bit of a wrong, not a wrong statistic. Are there any other factors that harm our health? Because I want to be clear. It's not just only emotions and negative thoughts. If you're eating toxic food, that's going to harm your body. If
If
you're
you
doing
live in toxic environments with a bunch of
that,
like
that's
heavy
correct.
metals or stuff like that, you know.
Yes. But we do know that if there was, you know, uh, 30% is going to be impact from the negative food. That 70% goes back to the emotions. So the emotions, again, are very key. And Dr. Bruce Lipton wrote a classic, I think it's now 20 years, the book, Biology of Belief, that he discusses also how beliefs can make you sick. It's an
Mm.
old book, but it's a classic book. It's a wonderful book. And there's a book by Dr. Sarno, who was a famous physician at the Rusk Institute in New York City, Mind Body Prescription, that he talks about the trauma in the body. And he was a known physician at the Rusk Institute, which does rehabilitation. And so he addressed that. And when he would address the emotional component, sometimes the patient didn't even need the surgery.
Wow. Yeah, that's definitely huge for sure. So, I'm curious in your opinion, I hear a lot of people kind of like making the case against like eating healthy or something like that when they like take or living healthy lifestyles because they'll take like some people who like don't eat healthy, they don't have a healthy lifestyle, but they're like still relatively physically healthy. And then there's other people who could be living the same lifestyle, but struggle with a lot of health issues. I'm just curious in your opinion. It's just a random thought that popped into my head. Like, do you feel like trauma has a lot of influence in how people react to those certain lifestyles?
So there could be some people who smoke and whatever, but they're enjoying their life.
Yeah.
And if they don't have any fear that the smoking is going to kill them, because the placebo effect works at the same time, they're very likely, if they're stress free and happy, the key is happy,
Mm.
then they won't have as fast as a damage, right?
Mm.
It's like imagine your body as a car, right? And you're constantly yelling at the car, never cleaning the car, and putting the wrong fuel in it. At some point, the car is going to break down. Uh,
Yeah.
the difference is those people have a high level of contentment or relaxation, and maybe it doesn't hit them right away. But some of them also may be smoking or something, and then all of a sudden they just drop dead overnight.
Yeah.
So, but the makeup of the person is important. Dr. Cummins wrote a book. He had a severe illness and he decided he was going to lock himself in a hotel room and watched comedy for 30 days straight. I think it was the Monty Pythons and some other stuff and some movie with the word duck, I think. I can't remember what movie it was. Well, he healed and he wrote a book.
Wow. Just through comedy movies.
Yeah. And changing his mindset. And I just heard of a story which was very interesting. It was a son and a mother. So the mother was diagnosed with cancer. The son made it, he's into this type of work, begged and pleaded with the doctor to not give her the diagnosis that she had just a month or two to live. So they fought, they didn't tell her. He lied to her. He modified a little bit her food, started doing some breathing and mindset exercise. So she never found her diagnosis. She was supposed to live 2 years. She lived 11 and a half years. That's
Wow.
different. I'm sorry. She was
Yeah.
supposed to live 2 months and
Oh,
she
okay.
lived 11 and a half years.
Wow.
And
That's
she
incredible.
and he did a lot of, he took her out all the time. He kept on getting her funny movies. He didn't let her watch the news at all.
That's a good
So,
one. I don't watch the news.
so I think some of social media and the news is extremely harmful. And for younger generation, it causes also attention deficit disorder, the constant interrupt that the
Mm.
phone keeps on pinging and pinging and pinging. You can't keep your head straight. And
Yeah.
one thing they can do is check their phone at regular intervals versus constantly having it on alert because it's
Yeah.
disrupting your brainwave.
Thought process. Your brain waves. Yeah. I know when I'm like focusing and I hear ding on my phone, I get so like annoyed because then I feel that like interruption in my focus. And I'm like, ugh. So I just turn it off. Most of the time I don't have my sound on because of that, because I don't like getting interrupted when I'm like in the flow. So yeah, that's definitely a big thing for sure. Anyways, I want to leave people, if it's okay, I want to leave people maybe with like an actionable kind of like practical application that can you take from EFT if it is possible. Um, just for reference, my audience tends to struggle with living in fight or flight a lot of nervous system dysregulation going on in the people who listen to this podcast episode. And so, do you have like a short kind of like EFT practice that people can do to help them get into the
Yes,
parasympathetic
I'll
state?
give them instructions how to do it.
Okay.
So the first thing they need to do is always start breathing in the belly. That is a must. If there's a physical pain or a knot, meaning a bodily sensation, to put the awareness on the sensation without wanting it to leave, because remember, it has
Mm,
information, and what
okay.
we resist persists.
Mm,
And
love
then
that.
if they want to do a flow tapping, so they're always breathing in the belly, especially if you're having an anxiety attack, I highly recommend you do slow breathing in the belly if you're noticing it's coming up.
Do you have like a certain tempo that you prefer?
Whatever they want, slow.
Okay.
Is so usually breathe through the nose and exhale through pursed lips would be the best. If you can put a little hold in it, that's fine. The inhale should be shorter than the exhale. The long exhale indicates that the body is safe. which is what we need, right? The safety. The act of tapping now, if they can just focus on the body sensation, is telling you there's no alarm going on.
Mm.
So all they need to do is focus on the bodily sensation, name the feeling. So I'm angry. And where do I feel it? I feel it in my gut. Why? Because Rachel's friend cut me off driving to your home, just making it up.
No. Yeah.
So I am angry. I can't believe he cut me on the road, right? So you just tap, expressing yourself. We don't suggest going to Rachel's friend and saying anything. We're just expressing it here. I'm so pissed off. This happens to me every time. I can't believe, and they will notice it's going to go away. If anybody from your audience wants the whole sequence, I have a PDF. If they contact me through my website, I'll send it. It's a free PDF. So anybody can do tapping. It's good. And if you don't know the words, just go. But if you do want to make it more, we always say, even though I have this anger in my gut, what is the event? So it's emotion, the body part, and what is the event? And then you put something positive on the even though to balance out. Well, I'm open to letting it go. This is what I'm feeling for right now. We don't want to go excessive to people. I deeply and completely accept myself because a lot of people are not there yet. So
Yeah.
I'm just open to not holding on to this anymore.
Mm.
Then you just keep on tapping. And that by itself, the words don't matter. The words literally don't matter.
Okay.
But the breathing does matter. And the awareness where it is by curiosity. Okay, so there's this pain. Just your awareness, wherever it is, it's going to make it leave.
Okay. And let's say for people who don't have the time or the resources to actually like do an EFT, like get the PFD, let's just say for example, EFT, yeah, EFT, PFD, PDF. I
Yeah.
can't talk.
Yes.
For example, what are maybe like three like spots that they can tap that would help them in this
A
specific
very good
scenario?
one is the thymus gland right here. Oops, get it a little further. So right here, the
Okay.
thymus. I like the wrists because a lot of meridians go this way. So I use the wrists and this one. And then if I had, because anger was my default under this would be my bra line. So right here,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
would do those. If they're having some stomach, I think this is the stomach, if I remember one of these. So they could do that. Or
Okay.
if they can't tap in public, I would squeeze the side of the bed of my finger because the meridians again go. I personally like the one in the chest and the one under here because it's anger. And then in public, I do this. So
Cool.
no one knows what I'm doing.
Yeah.
They just think I'm fidgeting with my
Yeah.
hands.
Yeah, that's definitely better than like going like, which is totally fine if you do that in public, but people may get a little bit confused. That's definitely super helpful. I wanted people to kind of know where they can start with EFT if they didn't quite have the time or the resources to look too much into it past this episode. So thank you very
Well,
much
thank
for
you very
sharing that.
much. It was an
Absolutely. If you
honor.
can, oh, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, it's an honor to help your audience. Yes.
Absolutely. If you can leave us with one final insight or reminder, especially for those looking to transform their health but feeling unsure, what would it be?
First of all, no matter where you are at, the body knows how to heal itself. No one is doing the healing. The body, under the right conditions, can heal anything. I would strongly recommend to look up the maps of consciousness and the book Letting Go, the Pathway to Surrender, where
Oh, I
there's
think I have that one.
48
I need to read it.
diseases that Dr. David Hawkins had, 48, and
Oh
they're
my gosh,
all
wow.
healed.
That's
And
incredible. Yeah.
motion. So that's what I would recommend. If you're having a panic attack or before the panic attack, slow breathing, but also start writing your name backwards on a piece of paper because now you have to engage your brain and the
Mhm.
focus to try to get the name backwards is going to interrupt. It's an interrupt pattern for the panic attack. Try and write it 7 times. By the time you finish your whole first name and last name, you've calmed down a little bit. So between the two, you can do that. I strongly recommend breath work. And if they want any more information, they could also come to my website. I have a free 30-minute complimentary session to give them information, and I teach a neuroscience class. And I have a free master class for that. And I write blogs about disease and different stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I will have all of your links in the show notes. I'll have your website below. I think your main social media is below as well in the show notes. But thank you so much, Sophia, for sharing your heart, your wisdom, and your healing journey with us, because this is something that a lot of people need to know. And it's a big missing piece in a lot of people's healing journey because they like to look at the supplement side of things or even the nutrition side of things, but the mindset side of things is so huge. So for anyone listening, again, who wants to connect with Sophia or explore EFT and reality hacking further, go to the show notes. You can go to her website, get that PDF, or you can connect with her. Are they able to connect with you on Instagram?
Absolutely. They can
Okay,
connect with me on Instagram. I have
amazing.
TikTok. I don't go on Facebook too much, but yes, I'm on Instagram and TikTok and
Perfect.
YouTube.
Perfect. I'll have those linked below. And as always, if this episode resonates with you, please share it with a friend, leave a review, and tag us on Instagram. Until next time, take care of your nervous system, trust your body, and remember that healing is always possible. Talk to you guys next week.